I think a CISO's life is changing. A CISO now has to be many more things than they used to have to be. And a good CISO now has to be a much better executive operator, a much better technical learner, and a much better understander of risk, and have a much better understanding of actual business outcomes.
If we were to talk about the CISO's reality right now, what are some of the consistent frustrations or fatigue patterns you see?
All the tools that we buy are designed to identify issues and vulnerabilities and problems. They're not identified or designed to help us fix them.
And how will AI help with some of that?
I don't need AI that tells me more things that need fixing, because that list is already very long. I need AI that helps me organize the already long list of problems into a coherent, time-based strategy, and then to actually execute.
Do you think because the role of a CISO is also getting more mature, there's a different set of skills that a CISO should learn right now?
CISOs now need to be more technically minded. You need to be better networkers. Also, the modern CISO needs to be risk aggressive.
Let's say if I am a security leader wanting to be a CISO, what should I do to become a CISO with what's going on in the industry right now?
You have to learn to be an orchestrator and an operator. I'm not going to need tier 1 entry-level people in the next 5 years. What I'm going to need is someone who's tier 2 who can manage and orchestrate efficiencies out of the tier 1 agentic workflows that I have.
What do you think a CISO would do to run their security organization in the next 5 years?
Wow, that's hard because
in every boardroom today, CISOs are asked to do more with less. More strategy, more reporting, more accountability, and somehow less time to think. I've spent the last few months talking to security leaders around the world, and the pattern is seen. They're drowning in noise and they're starving for leverage. And that's what this conversation is about. We're talking to someone who's redefining what leadership in security really means. I am Prasen Shelar, co-founder and CEO at Axari. We're building the next generation of AI workers that help CISOs run security like a business. But today isn't about tools or tech. It's about perspective. My guest is Jake Bernardis, CISO, angel investor, and I would say one of the most practical voices in cybersecurity leadership. So without wasting any time, let's dive in. Hey Jake, thank you so much for doing this. I'm really looking forward to this, by the way. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One is I've been talking to a lot of CISOs, but speaking with you is a little bit, I would say, we'll get to hear some modern insights that you're dealing with a lot of new companies right now. And I'm really excited to hear about that. So maybe we should start with a quick intro for people who want to know more about you. Where are you coming from? What have you done in the past that has actually shaped your leadership style to the modern CISO's leadership style overall?
Yeah, sure. So happy to be here. Thanks for having me and listening to my ramblings today. My name is Jake Bernardis. I'm currently the CISO at Anecdotes. I'm also an advisor, practitioner, investor, and general cyber guy. Based out of the UK, but I've been working in and around both the Tel Aviv, Silicon Valley, and broader US ecosystems for most of my career. At this point, I've lived and worked in the Far East, the Middle East, all over Europe and the US. And just this year, I've done 294,000 air miles, apparently, according to my Delta app. So I'm reasonably well traveled at this point, I think.
Awesome. I think that kind of gives you a different insight altogether, right? You work with a lot of fast-moving startups, and you've scaled globally across all of these things. What kind of drew you originally into security? Maybe you can share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think I kind of came full circle. I've shared this a few times on various podcasts, and I don't know if I've always shared the same version of the story, but I grew up very much with computers. I grew up building and playing with hardware back when you used to actually get a box and buy the parts separately and mount them together, not like it is today. I remember getting into hacking when there were games, right? I remember having this Amstrad PC where you could slide across the swap between the PC and a Sega Mega Drive. Then it had Minesweeper on it, and Sonic and various other games. I remember firstly working out how to create cheat codes. You could find them in magazines back then because there wasn't really a thing in the way the modern internet works. I remember starting to find my own by just button bashing and tweaking and playing, and then kind of firstly giving those and actually selling those to kids at school for things like Street Fighter or Sonic, wherever it might be. And I think that was my first moment I kind of realized, you know what, I quite like breaking things and finding out how things work. And then also going into the computers physically once we were kind of end of life and saying, if I do this, what happens? Like starting to overclock processes or starting to look at what water coolant might do, like seeing what you can physically do that's differently. I then followed a very different career path. So I ended up in finance, doing accounting for mergers and acquisitions at KPMG when they opened a Northern security team, and I was offered the chance to join it. I've never looked back since. Immediately I went, you know what? That sounds like something that I would love. Pen testing spoke to me, firstly at a web app level, and then later at both a social engineering and a FinTech angle. The idea of like how you can manipulate humans, how you can manipulate physical locations and physical security. And from that, my career's gone from there to consulting to CISOing. As I've been lucky to live and work and take my family all over the world, where I've learned. I think it's not just about, people always say about learning different cultures, but you learn different ways of leading, of guiding, of advising, of building by how different countries, that's inherent cultures of like affect the way they do things in their workplaces. So I'd say I'm kind of like a product of doing lots of different disciplines in lots of different places with lots of different people and trying to learn everything I could along the way.
I want to know a little bit more about like how you switched to being a CISO, Jake.
So I did testing at a company called MemSQL, now known as SignalStore, who just got sold into private equity, and basically hacked the building and the company, identified a huge amount of issues and vulnerabilities they had, and was then said, do you fancy fixing them? I'd never thought about it before. Until that point, I was very much a consultant and a breaker. I got offered the chance to build it. I kind of looked and went, maybe this is the time. I never looked back. I was employee like 30 or something at SignalStore, left to like 700 and something, scaled the org at a point where we were completely geographically dispersed during COVID, and we were hiring people at a rate of like 5 a week with a global IT physical supply chain that was beyond stressful. And yeah, from those days forward, I fell in love with building not just products and functions and security programs, but building teams and people. That's kind of where my love lies.
Got it. And then you kind of moved to the startup world. What's your story there?
So SignalStore itself was started. I joined at number 30. They scaled to become quite a large business with billions in revenue, but it was a startup when I joined very much. I went from there to Wistic to Gutsy, and Gutsy to Anecdotes. And I've done a bunch of advisory roles in between at companies like Maui Gym and Crocs and Plotly and other places where I've held CISO in residence or advisory titles and roles. And I think what I love about the startup and what's always attracted me is there's no rules, right? It's a place where as a CISO, you are intrinsically more tied to the business objectives and outcomes than you are anywhere else. Like you are part of an executive team that has one simple ideal: to grow the business. It doesn't matter what your hat or role is because you wear a valid hat at any point in time. I think also the fact that like I said, there's no rules from a security stance, right? It's build what you can, but build what's automatable, what's scalable, what's resilient, and what's forward thinking. So it gives you opportunities to avoid the red tape, to try new things. And most importantly, one of kind of my key points in life is to fail, right? The startup world allows you and embraces fail until you eventually succeed. And I think that's been fundamental in my kind of learning style on how to build and how to lead.
And that kind of gives you this chance to interact with a lot of CISOs every month, right? So if we were to talk about the CISO's reality right now, what are some of the consistent frustrations or fatigue patterns you see?
I think there's 3 for me, 2 quite specific and 1 broader. Number 1, we've managed to get through 7 minutes and 3 seconds without saying AI, but now we have. And I think that's a fundamental problem right now for us is in bidirectionally, like how do I apply and leverage agentic, MCP, traditional AI-based concepts to do more with less in a security context? But also at the same time, while everyone else in the business is thinking that, how do I now deal with this spiraling, reignited problem of shadow IT that's come through AI? Like how do I secure the AI that we're using internally, the AI tools that we're buying? How do we work with all of this stuff? So there's 2 problems in the AI world. I think the second is a problem we've had for a long time. It's not new. is that all the tools that we buy are designed to identify issues and vulnerabilities and problems. They're not identified or designed to help us fix them. So most of a CISO and their team's time is spent finding things and throwing them at people to fix. We don't spend much time actually maturing, like addressing real risk, like mitigating real risk. It's just, here's a risk and here's the control that like is relevant to it. So I think that's the second. I think the third is it's become, I've talked about this a lot in various places. I think there's two key things that a CISO now has to learn. One is that you're a risk professional. You don't own risk, you advise on risk, and you have to understand the core concepts of risk tolerance, risk acceptance, and how to embrace risk. You shouldn't, like a good CISO shouldn't be telling you no. They should be enabling you to embrace higher levels of risk. The second is that our roles get broader and broader and broader, where they start to include IT, and then I'll start to do parts of DevSecOps. And I've had the SREs report to me before, and now in many places you'll own AI, which is bizarre that you now own AI apparently. So your skill set is getting broader and broader. I think you've got to be very good at being able to be adaptable, being able to understand risk. And then the last one, which I think is really key right now, is being resilient. Like assume breach, prove otherwise. I think you have to be able to understand how you would restore operations, not just technology, but people, because you've got to assume that something's going to go wrong. And then on top of all of that, you've now got to be resilient as a human, right? There's a lot of talk about burnout and CISOs, about stress. I love what I do. It's not without stress and pressure, but I love it because I found a balance of knowing what I can do and knowing what's outside of my remit, being able to articulate that to the people that I report to, being able to empower my team to support in those efforts, and then understanding, like I said, fundamentally, what are the risks that we have that are the highest, worst risks, and how do we address them? Focus on those, and there's a limit to what's humanly possible, right?
So I think if I were to summarize that, right, I think you're saying overall, CISO's life is just really difficult. There's just a lot to do.
Yeah, I mean, difficult. I think a CISO's life is changing. The CISO that used to be like managing governance committees and red tape and then going to the golf course in the afternoon, like that role's gone. A CISO now has to be many more things than they used to have to be. And a good CISO now has to be a much better executive operator than they used to have to be, a much better technical learner than they used to have to be, and a much better understander of risk, and have a much better understanding of like actual business outcomes than they used to have to.
And how will AI help with some of that, or will make it more difficult? Because you see a lot more tools coming in the vertical security category right now. And with all of these advancements, how is the CISO supposed to actually react to it, or even be more proactive in terms of their strategy?
I need AI that does stuff. I don't need AI that tells me more things that need fixing, because that list is already very long. I need AI that helps me organize the already long list of problems into a coherent, time-based strategy, and then to actually execute, like to go and do some of the mundane tasks that my team don't want to do, so that they can focus on the complex strategic tasks where AI is still limited in its capabilities to succeed.
How do you manage your life, Jake, on a regular basis? Like, what are some of the things that you are maybe troubled with right now?
I think there's two questions there, right? Like, what are you troubled by and what do you do to manage it?
Yeah.
So I think troubled by is the fact that you never quite have your hands around everything. At any point in time, there are more things that I don't know about until I know about them, and I feel like I always know about them too late. So I think that most CISOs are troubled by the unknown unknowns, right? The things that we don't know, and our inability to execute on the things that we do know. So I am fighting fires frequently and responding to customer requirements or responding to regulatory requirements, which means there are areas of my security program I'd like to go deeper and mature and build out meaningful, repeatable workflows. That's an area that is frustrating. In terms of what you do to manage it, I think you get very acute in focusing your time and effort on the things that you can address most efficiently and then matter most. And I think you also have to try and find balance. So everyone has seen my LinkedIn as I'm a big runner and cyclist, and I like to get out and travel. And I think you have to find a balance in life to enable you to be efficient. I think people are ineffective when they never take time away from the keyboard.
Now, I think maybe from there, let's talk about the future of security leadership, right? I think we mentioned the challenges or the frustrations that a CISO would face. And you also mentioned that security leaders do need a staff that can be as intelligent or at least help take care of the mundane tasks that a CISO has so that they can focus more on strategy. What do you mean by that when you say this next generation of security leaders would need a staff like that?
Look, I think we're calling out the elephant in the room, right? That we need to find a way to better leverage both automation and agentic-led workflows to give us consistent and repeatable security operations. So we've already seen people start to address AI or agentic SOC, right? And we're seeing AI in TPRM, and we're seeing some AI in the GRC world, right? But I think we need to find like almost AI for headcount, right? We've had augmented staff for a long time. We should have augmented AI headcount, where the stuff which is repeatable, which is structured, which is stuff that probably doesn't require always the subjective human expertise, that we take that away and give it to agentic technologies to allow the people that we have and the limited bandwidth we have to focus on the things which are really complicated and really matter, which means we're actually overall we're delivering a much better outcome.
What do you think a CISO would do to run their security organization or their programs in the next 5 years or maybe 5 years out? And what's different about how they lead right now versus how they would do it 5 years out?
Wow. That's hard because 5 years ago, no one had heard of OpenAI, right? So a lot has changed in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Let's look at what I think the immediate future is. I think that CISOs become more orchestrators than they do managers. I think my workforce increases by 10x, but that's not a 10x of physical people on the floor. I don't think that security AI technology should be replacing security practitioners. They should be augmenting them to allow them to focus on stuff. We don't have a shortage of things to do. So bringing in AI workers, quote unquote, is something which is going to enable us to do more. I think that means that as a CISO, you have to get back down into understanding orchestration and automation levels so that you know what can and can't be automated in the most efficient, effective ways and where to apply the resources that you have that are not agentic, right? So I think that's really key. I think beyond that, we also then have to change our leadership styles. I think until historically, it's been almost a leadership by autocracy or by control. Like, here's our set of things that we need to do, like go and do them. I think then it becomes very much leadership by precision, in as much as like, here's the things I need you to focus on. Like these tasks we can do in a different way. Like, and it becomes also more about how you can enable your team to also enable themselves. So I've always said to my team, if you can automate your job and work 2 hours a day, have at it, like have a good time. And I think that's going to become more and more the important rhetoric we have is like, let's look at ways that we can do things better, smarter and faster, rather than being full of fear and dread about what's coming. Let's embrace it and see what it can do.
And if you were to give a piece of advice to the first-time CISOs with what you just mentioned, what would that look like?
I think there's two pieces of advice. I think one is a leadership style and one is very much a technological style. So leadership style, I would say lead with risk always. I've only just learned in the last couple of years that if you take your risk register, you should be able to stack the logos of every tool you have, every picture of every person you have, and every consulting or audit firm you have against the risk in that register. Right? That should show why you're spending what you're spending. And if you're going to ask for more budget, it should be aligned to the lines where you either still have a lot of risk left or you have nothing in the line. Right? You need to be addressing your security problem by building it not based on hype, but based on what your actual risks are that's relevant and specific to you, which are going to be different to every company. So I'd say use risk as your compass for how you build a security program. The second piece I'd say is learn to lead by example. Like I talked to a lot of CISOs and pissed off a lot of people by saying if your use of AI goes as far as like Claude and ChatGPT, you have no right to tell the organization how to deal with AI because you don't understand. Like if you need to, like right now, if you're not hands-on with things like Replit, building Zaps, like building Notion as a brain, using things like Bardine and looking like what you can do from an extension of an initial AI tool set. If you're not playing with Agent Kit and seeing what happens, like you don't really have the right to tell people. So I get hands-on and play, break things, go build an MCP server, see what happens, like see what it can do, leverage the capabilities that it has. So I would say that's my number 2 piece of advice is lead by example by getting hands-on. Even if you're quote unquote non-technical, I don't believe that anyone is non-technical, but if you're less technical, work it out or find people who can help you work it out. Like we need to be engaged in anything we talk about.
And do you think because the role of a CISO is also like getting more mature day by day, there's a different set of skills that a CISO should learn right now than what they have?
Yes. So I think CISOs now need to be more technically minded because, like I said, we're coming back to a world where we're going to leverage more agentic capabilities, more automation capabilities, more orchestration capabilities. And that requires someone to understand those concepts to be able to deliver strategy and help people support it. I think you need to be better networkers, both internally at a peer level and executive team, but also in a broader community, be able to get idea exchange and to be able to understand what's going on in the industry and how to better perform against those historical events or what's coming. And I would say also we need to be, we've talked a long time actually about this whole like move from the department of no to the department of yes. But I think the modern CISO needs to be risk aggressive. Like they need to be the person who says, yes, we can do that. Yes, I'll own that. The best way to secure AI is to embrace it and take ownership of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where I think the modern CISO now and the future CISO needs to be much more seen as a risk enabler, a business outcome enabler, a growth enabler, rather than a protector. Like these ideas of perimeters and protecting the crown jewels are just long gone. Like I said, it's human breach. Like this is the reality now we live in.
Could you give me some examples or scenarios of like how CISOs are looking towards new set of skills that you've recently seen with someone or some organization? Really interested in like knowing what exactly or where CISOs are headed a little more in terms of some of these things.
I think there's two things that when I look now, either recruiters hiring or I'm involved in some of the CISO recruitment processes as an advisor. There's two things we're looking at. One is a much more rounded soft skill set. It used to be like, you need to be an expert in your domain. I'm not looking for that anymore. I'm looking for an expert in being an executive. Like I want someone who understands how to operate at that level and to network and perform at that level. The second now that's unforgivable is a lack of knowledge or capability in AI. But the reality is you have to know what you're talking about right now. And we're talking technical concepts and constructs. So I think that would be number two. And then if I was going to look to number three, I think right now it's becoming more and more important that they have a voice and opinion. So it used to be the CISO was there just to say, we avoided the breach. Here's the cost of avoiding more breaches. Here's how many people I said no to, and here's why. Whereas now I think you have to have more of an opinion about this is the direction we should go in, and this is why, this is how we're going to achieve this. This is why we're not going to do that. Like it ties back a little bit to the soft skills and executive, but you need to have a voice and be part of that conversation.
Got it. And does that also mean that they need to be better business leaders? Because
100%.
security came from IT and it was more reactive, and now it's starting to get its own seat at the table with CISOs reporting directly to CEOs, right? Like, do you want the CISOs to be more like business rounded as well with that?
There are small parts of your job that your domain, right? A CRO is there for revenue, like a CMO is there for marketing, like a CPO is there for product design, a CISO is there for security and IT. But that's probably like 30% of your job. The other 70%, you should be the same as a CRO, a CMO, a CPO, a CTO, a CISO. It shouldn't matter. Like that other skill set is a leadership skill set. And that right now is becoming more and more important. When CISOs talk about not having a voice at the board, I say, you're not lacking your voice, you're lacking the ability to get your voice heard. Right? That's the problem is we have a lot of people who got the chair because they're experienced, right place, right time. They don't have the capability to actually be executives. Like if you look at what a CISO is now, that requires an executive skill set, which not all CISOs have.
And does that boil down to the ability of explaining what exactly you're doing with the organization and
It's
kind of giving that all data in a really story manner to the board or something?
There's two sides to it. One side is that it's how, like, traditionally you demonstrated your ROI and security program by saying, and we haven't been breached. And if we were breached, it would cost this much. So I'm going to ask for this many dollars to try and stop that breach. That's nonsense. It's hypothetical. It's theoretical. It's BS. But the reality is you have to go and say, here's what I'm doing and here's why I'm doing it. These are the risks that are relevant and specific to us. This is the outcome if these risks go wrong, by the way. And here's the level that we think we're comfortable at. And here's what we have to spend and the tools we have to use to get down to that level to either mitigate or to just reduce that risk in some way. So I think definitely you have to be able to translate complicated security scenarios into budget spend and understandable terminology. That also ties back to the business outcomes. So like in the end, it always comes back to every company is selling something. How am I helping you sell more? Am I opening new markets because of regulatory compliance? Am I producing security features that will allow you to go to a different ICP to a more enterprise customer type? Am I doing something that will enable you to improve your SLAs, which means you can ask for more money in terms of your customer support extras, right? What am I doing that helps the business go forward? So I think that, yeah, fundamentally, like, you have to be better at translating. But I think also beyond that, this skill is not just about translating your domain, but it's about just leading. Like, when you sit in an executive offsite, I'm spending an hour of 2 days in the next couple of days talking about security. I'm spending the other like 16 hours talking about everyone else's domains. I should have input into those, or else what's my use at the table? They can just invite me for the 1 hour that I'm relevant to. Like, you have to be able and relevant to have input into all the parts of the business's growth strategy and those functions that are valuable, because you come from a different mindset, a different experience, a different philosophy and ideology of how you see the world than a salesperson does. So I can see things in go-to-market that they can't see. The same as they will see things in security that I don't see. That's how executive teams should work.
The agentic world right now is taking a lot of responsibilities, or I would say knowledge augmentation as well, right? You can create an agent for vulnerability management. You have AI SOCs already going on, right? And what I mean by knowledge augmentation is that, like, you feed in a lot of information and you train these agents to be domain experts. And they can essentially do the hands-on work for you that, like, a tier one analyst was doing earlier, right? And with more and more of that happening in the industry, and it's being led towards this migration of, like, okay, how much of the work can be actually augmented and who would do what kind of work? How does that change the CISO's role? Or let's say if I am not a CISO right now and I'm a security leader wanting to be a CISO, what should I do in my journey to become a CISO with what's going on in the industry right now?
So those are two questions. One, if I want to be a CISO, and two, if I am a CISO. If I want to be, you have to learn to be an orchestrator and an operator. So if you look right now, I'm not going to need tier one entry level people in the next 5 years. What I'm going to need is someone who's tier two, who can manage and orchestrate efficiencies out of the tier one agentic workflows that I have. So I need someone who runs the agents, right? Tier two, tier three, and upwards to CISO aren't going to go away. We're going to start with tier one for sure. It's going to take a while before we get that right. So I think what you need is someone who's developing that skill set that says, not only can I deliver on security capabilities, now I understand domain A, domain B, domain C, but I also know how to be the orchestra or be the operator, be the conductor, so to speak, of the agents that can deliver on those core capabilities, which is something you probably didn't grow up with, Mr. CISO. So I think that's one skill set that's going to enable you to go up that chain faster. If you're already a CISO, I think it's about the fact of embracing now what's possible. If tier one can be replaced by agents, that's a hell of a lot of time. Like, we look at Anecdotes, one of our main sales pitches is, look how much time we'll save you if you don't have to manually collect evidence anymore. If you automate evidence collection, you'll save all this time, right? Time is money. The same is going to be true as a CISO. If you don't have to do all these tier one tasks anymore, you save all this time is money. The next question is, what do? You either take a business case to the board that says, I've just saved X% of my budget. Brilliant, I'm a genius, right? I've made the cash flow better. Or my personal perception, and I hope what most CISOs think is, well, I've now got all this extra time over here. Let's go and do more stuff. Let's go and deal with all those risks we never talked about. Let's go and work with the dev team to do more security reviews on the code side, on the life cycles. Let's go and do more vulnerability remediation and better classification of vulnerabilities. Let's go and do things that we wanted to do before, but couldn't. But I think that's the modern CISO, if they want to do more, is to do more with less. Like, enable tier one, find those savings, focus on doing better things, go back to the board and say, we got maturer because we leveraged agentic AI.
Well, that was really cool, Jake. I have one last question for you. This is something that I've been, like, seeing a lot on LinkedIn, right? And every CISO loves to post this, that what's one thing you wish every founder building for CISOs understood?
I think when a founder's been a CISO immediately, because they understand how we think. CISOs are a strange bunch in many ways. We come from different backgrounds, but we share many common characteristics. I think understanding what I'm going to find interesting And that's a very broad response, but let me try and double click on it somehow. Like, I don't care what's shiny and sexy and cool. Like, I care if you come with a concrete use case that is a problem that I have and a new and innovative way that's going to solve that problem in a way that I can't do right now. So we talked about agentic AI workflows, right? Right now, I have many workflows inside of my security teams that I cannot automate because we don't have the technology, nor do I have the capabilities internally to go and build the agent workflow to do that. If I'm presented with a tool or a product which says I can do 50% of this for you tomorrow, they've identified the fact that I have a pain, which everyone shares. There is a way to solve this, and it is different from the ways it's been done before. If you show me that works, then I'm there, right? I'm there for it. And I think that's what every founder needs to understand is just because you think it's cool doesn't mean I think it's cool. Like, listen to the CISOs and what they actually care about.
And do you also maybe want the founders to help you sell it to your CFO? Is that something that they should do? Inevitably.
I think that's an excuse made by CISOs too often who are not very good at internally understanding metrics and financials. I think if your product is good enough, I shouldn't need any problem explaining it to my CFO. Like, if your product really does fix a problem I've got and do it in a more efficient and innovative way than done before, therefore giving me either a time or direct cost saving, I don't need you to tell me how to tell that story, right? That story should be easy to tell. So it's all about come with a product that fits a use case that I have in a different way than it was done before and gives me a demonstrable and obvious saving. And that's what every CISO will buy.
That does make a lot of sense, actually. Like, if you are able to articulate all of those things really well, where you see the value, you don't necessarily need to get that from a founder. You can essentially explain that yourself.
I mean, if you look at some of the fast growth space and look at the CSDM space, like Wiz, Orca, look at that kind of world, right? They grew super fast. They didn't need to tell me what the product, if you need to explain to me for half an hour why their product is relevant to me, your product probably isn't relevant to me. Right? You might convince me eventually, but if you come and say, you've now deployed everything in the cloud, that's a SaaS world. You have no way of knowing what's going on in that cloud. Let's deploy agents, which can, well, not in the modern agent sense, but in the historical agent sense, they can tell you what's going on with all those VMs, identify things and flag alerts or to automate and trigger things to happen. That wasn't a hard sales pitch. Everyone got it, right? I think that's the key, right? Look at those kind of historical success stories about where someone had something which truly had product market fit because they did their research and they brought to market something which was really needed, and the rest of it happens for itself.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jake. As I said, that was really gold, and it's always a pleasure talking to you. And I would say thank you especially today for helping us reimagine what security leadership looks like right now and would look like in the future as well. What I loved about today's conversation with Jake is that his message is pretty clear. The future of security leadership isn't about dashboard. It's about decisions. And to do that, you actually need systems and staff that thinks with you and not just for you. And not to promote, but that's exactly why we started Axari, to give every CISO their own executive operator, a digital staff that clears the noise, tracks the work, and brings back time to lead. If it actually resonated with you, I would really request you to follow 10 Minutes with CISOs wherever you listen, and please join the movement at axari.ai. Until next time, lead with clarity, not chaos.